Hey y'all, welcome back. I hope you're all well and thanks for tuning in. This is the last piece of the IBM puzzle I wanted to show to you guys. This is the actual processor. It's quite big. It took me a while to heave it up onto the bench here, and it does kind of fit. Well, not really, but it's hanging over the edge. But we're going to tie into this one today, show you what it's all inside. It's not as eventful as I'd like it to be, but anyways, this isn't really the back, but I'm going to call it the back side anyways. On the back here, there's two openings on the back that are for about 4 inches square, and those are for ventilation. Ventilation comes from the back and it feeds forward. And then there's also two slots here, two empty slots, because I removed them. These are the power supplies that would fit into this slot, and they would actually occupy that space there, and there would be another one in beside it. So there's always two, one for redundancy. And so I removed those two. So there's two slots, power supplies are removed. I'm going to take this out of here, so we're not looking at that today. That was in a previous video. This here is either the top or the bottom, depending on how it's installed in the rack. If I crushing things here. If you look on the side here, this multi-pin connect, I think there's 1400 or 1600 pins here. This fits into that motherboard that I showed you in a previous video, and there is a mechanical assembly that I removed already that sits in this tray, and its job is to move the processor module in and out to the connector so that these mate and unmate. So in operation, it's actually standing up like this. That's how it's standing up in operation. And depending on if this is on the top or the bottom, because this could be flipped over 180 degrees and mounted underneath to the main board. But anyways, there's really nothing on the bottom other than a big huge aluminum plate and several screws, probably about 20 or so screws holding it plate on. But let's flip this down again so we can have a look at this side. On the business end of this, we have 6 slots. 3 of them are populated right now. I think this one was populated as well. Plus there's 2 empty spares. These have RFI interference shields pushed in to, to block the RFI from interference. Plus they allow airflow. So those are just blanks. And then there's 6 slots. 3 here and 3 here. Now this is the input-output side of all the data that's going in and out of the processor. On this side we got 2 covers with quick latches. So I'll remove this one. This is all RFI gasketed as well, and it has foam blocks to control the airflow. Here we got 4 processors, or 4 CPUs, let's say, and they're all copper heat sinks. And we even have baffles that are put in here to keep the airflow from, you want the airflow to go through the heatsink, not around it, so they put little baffles and stuff in here. There is a little bit of memory here. I don't know what this is though. I can pull some of it out and have a look. Get my fingers in here. And it has these plastic diffusers. Well, it's all geared for the airflow. That's all they want to control. These are 2 gigabyte sticks, and they got 8 of them here. Yeah, there's 8 of them here. 2 gigabyte sticks, so 16 gigabytes of RAM here. populated both sides. So let's just slap this back in. Let's pull out the other one. Let's open the other door up. This one here, I believe, is only, yes, it's only memory. And it has the same thing, it's got gasketed for RFI suppression, foam for airflow control, and we have quite a few memory sticks in here. What do we got? 32 maybe? 16? Let's pull one out and see what it is. Same thing. It's 2 gigabytes, 256 megabytes times 72. So there's a few RAM sticks in here. Let me get the RAM out, and then we'll see what else we can find in here that's interesting to look at. Yeah, so there's 32 sticks of 2 gig RAM, 64 gigs of RAM total. I don't know the architecture of their processor, if each CPU has its own 8 gigs of RAM, or if they're doing some kind of sharing thing, bus sharing between all the memory. I'm not sure how they do that. That's beyond my expertise, but somebody else might know. Big copper heat sinks. Let's pull the CPUs out next. So we got 4mm wrench, hex wrench. Let's loosen off the clamp. Ooh. And this is just a big metal spring in the middle that's putting downward pressure on the heatsink. And when I release the spring tension, it comes free. Big M6 bolt. Alright, so there's 4 little screws here, and these are T8 Torx. I'm going to remove these little screws. I suspect they're going to hold down the heatsink. Loose. Okay, so let's unhook this. Oh, it's heavy. Oh my goodness. That is heavy. That's about 5 pounds right there. And there's our CPU. The Interconnects. I think you'd have your tools ready when you're doing this. So this is, you can see through it. This is your interconnects. This is all the pin connects to the board. And if you can see it down here is a gold-plated area with all the connections that match up with the CPU. And made by Foxconn. Here is the CPU. And it appears to be locked down with a this locking ring here. Let's try removing this. There's one ring. And this one has a couple pins here. This one has 2 pins here, this one has 2 pins here. only goes together one way. Okay, let's try this. I've got other CPUs here. I'll show you one of them. This is an IBM processor. 9316, I don't know what. It's a power. You can see that. And it's quite a bit smaller. Here's the connector for it. You can see it's quite a bit smaller. Actually, this goes like this. And then that's clamped down. It's got heatsink up. But this one's quite a bit bigger. Look at that size difference between the two. Alright, so I had to resort to taking this out to the garage and using the hammer and chisel on it, and got it to break free. Here's a good look at what's underneath. There you go. Isn't that beautiful? So we got one massive die in the center and two smaller ones on the outside, loaded with capacitors, and there's a couple of little chips here. I don't know what they're doing, but there it is. And I do believe it is bonded to the metal frame. That's why I couldn't budge it. And the metal frame was bonded to the copper with it's like a high density silicon sealant, silicon adhesive. And then we got, of course, got our thermal compound here. Looks like it's dried up. It's not soft or wet. And then we got our landings for the three chips. And it's all been machined. Nicely machined. There you go. Nice look at that chip. So each one of these modules has 4 of these chips, and like I said, 32 sticks of RAM, 2 gig each, so that's 64 gig of RAM, and yeah, it's kind of interesting, I think. Put that back together. Now I did manage to get one of these out. It's kind of a convoluted process. There is a blue, there's a hole here with a blue sleeve on it, and that directs your screwdriver to a screw that's hidden deep inside there, and you need to back that screw off. And what that does is it lifts up the entire thing. Here you can see how this one's been lifted, and it lifts it up off the connector. And it provides access to, there's another screw under here. It's like a 3mm hex, and once you take this screw out, then the whole thing is removable. So let's open one of these up and have a look inside. I don't know, this is your input and output. This is let's take out this one as well, because this one's a little different, so I'll pull that one out as well. Alright, so let's have a look at one of these modules. It is of course it's gasketed, full metal gasket all the way around to suppress EFI. And this one's made in Thailand. Let's pull out this last screw. And hopefully it comes apart easy. There's one more screw. Kind of a plastic, chrome plated plastic. I don't know why they chose that. Here's the mechanism that lowers and raises the board. I don't know what kind of screw that is. It's got a, turn it clockwise. pull this out. So here's a few power lines here. There is 8 power lines, and then the rest are all signal. Goes into a EGA flip chip. And there's some power supply here. There's a MOSFET. It's inductors, capacitors. And I think all this does is just basically it's just an input-output device, and it flows data in and out of the processor. It's pretty cut and dried. That's what it looks like to me. Alright, so here's the other one with the parallel interface. Let's open this one up and have a look inside. I expect it's going to be more of the same. This is going to have a controller, a little bit of memory, local memory, and maybe a power supply or two. Alright, one more screw. So all it does, I think, is just flow the data in and out. Alright. Okay, there it is. This chip here it's an aluminum heatsink. It's odd. It's like it's cast. This one has a lot more capacitors on here. It's got a clock. No memory. The other one had memory on it. This one doesn't. It's got a little chip here and a bigger chip here. BGA flip chips. Power conditioning. There's a MOSFET here. It's a 62 megahertz clock. Is that what that says? I don't know. Alright, so I got the screws out. I'm going to remove this front frame assembly, if it'll come. And it's pretty much all aluminum. Some honeycombing here for the airflow. Just to provide RFI shielding for the innards and to prevent emission leakage, I guess. They're using like aluminum honeycomb. And that's designed to flow air. Let's put that aside. Here's all the input connectors, input-output connectors, 6 of them. And I'm going to start to see the board now. The board is about 6 mil thick, I would say. It's got quite a few layers. So I'm going to take these other 3 CPUs out, and then we'll try and get this board out of the frame here. So I did measure one of these heat sinks and weigh them, and they're just over 3 kilos each. So that's a good chunk of copper. What was that, like 7 pounds or something? 6.5 pounds? We'll play with that later. Definitely going to be a few bob in some scrap aluminum here, that's for sure. So I'm getting the chassis here pretty much emptied out. Need to remove this side because I think, well, I probably get this frame out without removing the side, but I want to get the side apart anyways. Here's a little interesting thing, I think. I don't know. plugged in the back here, and I believe this is just a temperature sensor. There's a little tiny cover with it looks like 3 transistors mounted on there. Let's pull this open. Oops. And this is like a little module that plugs in. There's 3 little transistors, and they look like they are, let me read the part number out to you. 79AC LM60B1Z. I do believe these are just temperature sensors to sense the air temperature and get some feedback onto the cooling of this thing. Okay, I'm gonna flip this up and over, and then I'll remove whatever I can here for this side. Probably in this side too, if I can get at it. Now we can see the power connectors, and there's a module here of some kind. Wondering what that is. Okay, I got the one side off. It was pretty easy, quite a few screws. And you can see the detail they put into this. This is all gasketed here. And I guess they're doing EFI suppression. But that was a nice machine finish, and it fit. I don't know why they would need to gasket that. They're worried about having some leakage there, I guess. But yeah, see the back panel, they got this honeycomb filter on here as well to let the air flow through, but it suppresses all the high frequency EFI. So it has a bottom on it. If I flip it over, you can see there's a huge plate on the bottom. I think I'm going to remove this next because I think it's hiding another board. Just from the way this thing is put together, I think there's 2 boards in here. So I'm going to see what's underneath this plate. Okay, so we just about got all the screws. I think I got a couple left here. Handful of screws. And one more. And then we'll get a look inside. It's even got ventilation here on the front lip. You can see it's punched for airflow. Why is it not? There we go. Insulating sheet. Looks like we have some heat conducting putty. Must be some MOSFETs underneath here. There's not much showing on this side of the printed circuit board. There is a big huge board underneath the other one, and it's got all these high current connections with these screws. Let's see if we can take one of these off and see what's under. And I think they flow through to the other board. It's all copper here. I can see some gold down inside there. And then it's threaded. So let's just continue. I don't know if I'll take this off yet. I can remove this now, but it's going to take me a while. I'm going to have to get my gun out. And what size is this thing? T10. I wonder if I have a T10 bit. Make this go a lot faster. Here's a look up, close-up of the connections on the back. I got a reflection here. I can show over here. Plated through copper holes these huge vias, and there's what, 10 vias, and then the one big one in the middle. And if you look inside, you can see a little bit of gold in there, so there must be a contact of some kind in there. And each one's got a big screw. Very nice board, like it has all these dimples on it, and that's etched into the copper. I don't know why they did that. It doesn't provide any shielding. There's just little dots of copper. It just makes it look nice. And then you have these areas where there's a pad of vias, another pad of vias, and more vias. And then up here, this is where the power comes in. You got two slots for the power supplies, and that's where all the power comes in. So I think this board is just a power distribution board. I don't see anything on it. It's very thick though. It's like let me show you here. Let's see how thick this board is. It's almost like a 1/4 inch, 6 mil maybe. So I'm assuming there's a few layers in there. Not much written on it. Alright, so I got all the screws out, with the exception of these two, and these ones hold the huge connectors in place. I think this is ready to come apart. What do we have here? It's just banks of capacitors. It's a massive board. The gold connectors for the power supplies. There's a connector here for some data that I don't know. And this here has a temperature sensor. Then there's these banks of tantalum capacitors. Like they're 470 microfarad each, and there's like hundreds of them. So you're doing some localized filtering. And this here, I don't know what this is. Pull this out. It's got a couple of cobs. There's a clock there, and then there's 2 cob chips. And then some support. I don't know what that is. Made in Thailand. It could be a key. Who knows? I'll put this big board aside. And then it exposes all the interboard connectors. Gold plated. Each one's clamped down and transfers current. Each copper pad transfers to a gold connector, and then that gold connector is soldered in to the other board. Here's the bottom of the 4 CPUs. And that's about it. There's that other mystery part. We're going to get to that in a bit. Here, let's flip this over and let's take this other side off, I think. This board here, I believe, is some kind of a watchdog computer monitor, probably system monitor. I have a feeling that's exactly what this does. Seems to be the only bit of electronics in this whole assembly that's not either doing processing or memory. So let's have a look here. I got a couple of super caps, 1 microfarad or 1 farad. Don't see much going on. Maybe those are microcontrollers. Their reset button, maybe. There's no memory. It's very sparse on the parts count. This might just be a you got 2 super caps, 1 ferrite each. And that's all there is to it. Let's pull up the main board. Here we're showing the underside of the CPU. Each CPU has its own backing plate. This is about 8 millimeters thick. It's very heavy, and this is actually what they use to clamp the CPU down to the board. They have what looks like a plastic transparent disc here stuck on the bottom side of the PCB, and then there's an insulating sheet. Let me pull that out to make sure there's no short circuits. So this has got quite a bit of clamping pressure on each CPU. I don't know if you saw the spring before. There was quite a heavy duty spring, and it was clamped down on the CPU, sandwiched between the PCB board and the heat sink, and there's a lot of clamping force there. So I'm trying to get the frame off. I got all the screws out, so I'm trying to nudge this out of position. If I can, oh, there's still some more here. I gotta remove these 8 screws. Okay, so I think I got all the screws out now. What's holding is these 2 locating pegs, and this one's tight. This one's got an oval slot, so it's open. But I think I can get this. There we go. And there's the main board with all the power connectors. We have these insulating sheets. They can come off, and it's all bare copper, loaded with capacitors on the back side. Really no other support circuitry whatsoever. We got memory slots and CPUs, and that's capacitors. That's about it. One thing I wanted to point out is each memory slot has an LED. You can't see them on the camera. I'll show you here in close up. There's an LED on each slot. I guess that's some kind of a status lamp. Maybe it's to tell the controller if there's a bad memory stick somewhere. And then it makes it easy for service. If you come and you look and one lamp is out or one lamp is red or whatever they use. But yeah, there's not much on here. It's all, this is all input output. I'm curious as to why they have so many connectors, interpin connectors between the CPUs. Or the processing units, and then here they have just a little bit of input output, and this seems to be the only way the data is flowing in and out of the processors. But definitely interesting. Connector here, and that's it. There's no semiconductors, there's no chips, there's no active logic. It's all just power, CPU, memory, and bypass capacitors and input output connectors. And there's the frame. Put this aside. Here's the frame. It weighs a good 4, maybe 5 pounds. It's going to be scrap aluminum. Get paid out for that. Everything's gasketed, like I said. So I got 3 more of these units I have to tear down, and I'm going to be scrapping all of the aluminum, the copper, and probably get all my money back from what I paid for the entire server. There was, like I said, there was 8 slots for processors, and only 4 of the slots were occupied. So It's quite a machine. Alright, I think that's all I got for this. I have a few other pieces I can show you. There was a few hard drives that are sitting in caddies. Nothing interesting to look at there. And there was a control piece of equipment that held a couple of DVD drives. And I think that was just, you know, for loading software or whatnot. I could show you that, but okay, so here's the last piece of gear. I'm going to put this on the end, just tack it on because it's not really worth making another video for this. This was part of the rack-mounted server components, and it just seems like it's an empty box. And what it does is I think it holds a couple of drives. I think there used to be 2 DVD drives here, tandem pair, and then there's this thing that was plugged in. This is actually a tape unit, a DAT, Digital Data Storage 160. I can see a spinning head in there, so it's some kind of tape drive backup unit. And then there was this here. It seems like, what was that? It's just a power supply. Let's see what this is. Let's disconnect this. We got power cables. We got this ribbon cable goes to these 2 signal lights. There's a little fan in here. Switch mode power supply. Looks like there's a choke and there's an inductor or a capacitor. And it looks like it's a power feed here. And I think that is not 300 volts. I think that is probably a lower voltage. They're not doing any 300 volt stuff here, that's for sure. Output to all the drives. There's provision for 4 drives here, I believe. And the rest of this is just a controller. Yep. So that's all there is. This is kind of interesting though. This is a tape drive. You don't see these very often. That's pretty much it. I'm going to scrap this as well. It's in the way. It's taking up room. That's pretty much all there was to this. A lot of it got scrapped before I started filming, so you couldn't see the cabinet. I should have had some pictures of that. That would have been nice. But that's it as far as this one goes. I'd like to get more of these in the future because they are definitely a gold mine, and you know what I mean. So yeah, I'll be keeping my eyes open for more of these, and then I'll be bidding and hopefully successfully buying them at a good price. All right, thanks for watching, and post your comments below. Thanks.